Hey guys, Heidi Preep here. Today I wanted to make a video that I feel like there is just so much confusion around because, as you know, if you follow this channel, if you don't, welcome to my channel, we talk both about attachment styles and about different personality systems that help us understand ourselves and other people better. Now, sometimes we get these systems confused and we decide that they are all one big system and that the traits from one system must apply or cross over in specific ways to the traits of the other system. But this is absolutely not true. So where I see this confusion happening very commonly is people will come to the videos about fearful avoidant attachment and they will talk about it as though it is interchangeable with the term ENFP. It is not. So you can have any attachment style, have any Myers-Briggs personality type, and those two things do not necessarily conflict with each other in any way. Now, this does not mean that the expression of your personality type will not be affected by your attachment system. It absolutely will. And we are going to go very deep into this in upcoming videos that I will talk to you about in a couple of weeks. But for the time being, I want to talk about what the difference is between, let's say, a perceiver fearing commitment versus someone who is afraid of commitment because they are on the avoidant attachment spectrum, okay? So again, I see a lot of people specifically thinking that the term ENFP is interchangeable with the term fearful avoidant. And I understand the confusion because when you look at the cognitive functions of the ENFP personality type, you see that we have this love of exploration and this desire to not be tied down, but also this desire for intimacy and connection and depth in our relationships, which can lead to a kind of hot or cold expression when it comes to personal relationships. However, this is not the same thing as attachment wounding. Attachment wounding is about having early experiences that orient our worldview of relationships in a specific way. And in the case of the fearful avoidant, it often involves having a large amount of unprocessed, unresolved trauma. Personality systems, particularly Myers-Briggs, does not at all look at trauma. It does not look at how our trauma responses shape the expression of our personality. So we have to separate those two systems, okay? So what I'm going to talk about today is some of the reasons why an ENFP who does not necessarily have a fearful avoidant or avoidant attachment style, who may have a perfectly secure attachment style, might still fear and struggle with commitment, right? Because there are certain things that are just personality traits or that are natural extensions that might come out of our personalities that can orient us a little bit more in one direction or the other. So here are 3 reasons why the ENFP in your life might be a little bit fearful of commitment, even if they have a secure attachment style. So reason number 1 why the ENFP might struggle a little bit with commitment is that we tend to think very deeply about people, about psychology, and about our own inner worlds. So because we are so oriented towards understanding people, we don't necessarily find it difficult to connect with a lot of people. However, this isn't accidental. It's often because we have taken the time to really learn and understand how other people operate. Now, a lot of the time, other people only take the time to do this if it's someone that they love and care about, right? So if you're someone who is not particularly interested in psychology, who is not particularly interested in figuring out what makes people tick, you might only go to great lengths to figure out what it is that makes the people you love so special, if you have a concrete reason to, like you are extremely interested and invested in them. However, the ENFP tends to find pretty much everyone they meet really interesting. And we might want to psychoanalyze people really thoroughly, despite the fact that we don't actually plan to get that close to them. It's just kind of this program that tends to run in the back of our minds, where we're always thinking about what makes people operate the way that they do. But to other people, this can be mistaken as extreme interest in them, right? So often if we have even a passing interest in someone, we will take the time to really get to know them, really understand what makes them tick, and then we might feel like once we've gone down that road a little bit, oh, this is just a friendship, right? This isn't necessarily a serious committed partnership that I want with this person, but it might feel different from the other side because most people are used to people only taking that level and depth of interest in them if they are very invested in getting to know them in a relationship setting, right? And to be fair, and to not gaslight everybody in the process of saying this, there is definitely, I think, a part of most people who have auxiliary FI's minds that naturally falls a little bit in love with a lot of people. Because we're so interested in people and we love getting to know people, I think that if you get to know anyone on a deep enough level, you find something to really love in that person. Right? When people show up in an honest and vulnerable and open way, it is hard not to feel connected to them. But because we might get there with more people than the average person, it means that we have to be very careful and intentional about who we choose to make commitments to. So it might look like we are being commitment phobic when in reality, we are just going deeper more quickly than a lot of other people would, and then kind of withdrawing a little bit to consider whether or not we want to take things to the next level. And I think that this is not just an ENFP issue. I think that this is an NF issue in general. Like ENFPs, INFPs, ENFJs, and INFJs, I've all heard speak about this, where they're like, yeah, people always think that we're way closer than I necessarily feel very quickly upon meeting them. And so you can imagine how intense it is when two NFs meet each other. But overall, I do think that that contributes heavily to the stereotype that ENFPs are commitment phobic. It's actually that people don't realize that we tend to go deep fairly quickly with a lot of people, and that getting close quickly to someone isn't necessarily abnormal for us. So I think there can be like a little bit of a misperception there. But now let's get into the realer stuff. So reason number 2 why a lot of ENFPs truly do fear commitment is because our inner landscape, if you will, orients itself towards possibility. So when we are going through the course of our day and we are thinking our thoughts in our mind, most of what we are thinking about is what could happen in the future. And this is especially true for younger ENFPs. So those of us who have not yet hit, let's say, loosely middle age, which I realize is like a very wide margin of time. But I think that it's a very common theme for young ENFPs to be so captivated and enchanted and in love with the possibilities they envision for the future that they can really struggle to prioritize a relationship above those possibilities. So my solution to this, and what I would always tell ENFPs, is that you need to try to find a relationship, if it's what you want, that will open more doors for you than it closes, right? And I do think that once we find a relationship that we do feel like allows us to be more free and to explore more of the world and more opportunities than we would have without that relationship, we can be very happy to commit, and we can be very grateful and giving in a relationship, and we can be happy long term. It's just that it's difficult and rare to find someone who values and prioritizes future possibilities to the same extent that we do, right? Because we do prioritize those things, in my opinion, much more heavily than the average person. So even though we can love someone and appreciate someone and really value what they could bring to our lives and maybe even love them romantically, it will be hard to make a commitment if we feel like that person is going to hold us back from the opportunities that we see for our own future, because we are the happiest and we flourish the best when we are able to actualize on as many possibilities for the future as we see fit, and where we are encouraged to go run and find out and explore quite a bit. And a lot of people find that really stressful to handle in a relationship, right? So I made another video called Things That the ENFP Needs in a Partner, something like that. But one of the biggest themes that came up in that video, and that I see coming up for ENFPs in real life, is that they need a partner who really encourages their independence and who is okay with living a life that includes a lot of uncertainty and variety, because we thrive on those things. And that does not mean that those things are better than certainty and security and playing it safe in life. Those things are absolutely respectable values, but they're not the values that ENFPs tend to hold. So it can feel difficult for us to commit to any relationship where we feel like our independence or our ability to go for things and to make wild, exotic plans for the future and to run down a lot of different rabbit holes to figure out what feels exciting to us in life is going to be impeded upon by a relationship. And if that's the case, even if we love someone so much, and even if some part of us really wants to keep them in our lives, it's probably just not going to be the best fit in terms of combining lifestyles. And when you're looking at a long-term partnership, combining lifestyles is a humongous part of that, right? So I think that a very big reason why most ENFPs tend to struggle a little bit with commitment is not because they're emotionally unavailable, but because they recognize that they have very unique interests and a very unique way of living, and they struggle to find a partner who could meet them there. But it's not a fear of commitment. Like if we meet someone who is happy with the same kind of lifestyle that we're happy with and who we love and appreciate as a person, I think we actually kind of shine in those partnerships and might be very happy to commit to them. Because again, we really value emotional closeness and intimacy. It's just that we don't want to be held back from the other things that we want out of life. And reason number 3 why ENFPs tend to, in my opinion, get kind of a bad rep for fearing commitment is a little bit more true to form when it comes to what it means to fear commitment. And it is that we take longer, in my opinion, than the average person to really figure out and feel comfortable resting on who we are and what we value in life. So there are all of those things that I just mentioned that are natural parts of our cognitive process, like being explorative and wanting to have lots of experiences and wanting to plan for the future and try out a lot of different things. Those are, I don't know if I would call them values, but they are inherent parts of our personality. But when it comes to actual values in terms of what we want to intentionally cultivate in our lives and what we want to create stability and consistency around, those things take a long time to figure out, because the way that our cognitive stacking is oriented means that we have to go try things out, see for ourselves how we feel about them, and really figure out consistently over a long period of time what we like and what works for us before we're able to say, okay, this is something that I am sure I want in my life. So an ENFP might not know in their 20s if they want to live in the city or in the forest, if they want to focus really heavily on their career or settle down and have a family, if they want to prioritize community or prioritize personal development, or any other wide range of priorities that one could form. We often feel the need to sample extensively before we decide upon. But when we do start arranging our priorities, often closer to the age of, let's say, 30 or 40, when that introverted sensing really starts to kick in and helps us see the patterns about what we have consistently valued over long periods of time, we're able to make decisions much more easily. But again, I think that because a lot of people don't have to go through the same exploratory process, or at least not to the same extent that any DOMs tend to go through in order to figure out who they are and what they value, it can feel like we are constantly shifting the game, right? Like last week we thought we wanted this and now we want this, and that can be disorienting to other people, especially to potential partners. But it's again just a different way of operating and showing up in the world, because a lot of people choose their values based on what has been passed down to them from their family members or society, or what makes logical sense to them. And a lot of those things make it easier to make long-term choices earlier on in life, because it doesn't require the same sense of exploration to land on a concrete path forward if your values are coming from somewhere outside of yourself, or if your values are a little bit more predictable. And once again, there's no right or wrong way here. They're just different ways, right? So for ENFPs, it can be difficult for us to commit to people early on in life because we don't yet really know who we are, what we want, and what we are going to consistently value over the course of our lives. Now, this is not true for every ENFP. It is obviously going to be different person to person, but I do see this as a general trend and something that I think ENFPs are a little bit misunderstood for. Because someone with a more traditional approach might not understand why one thing was valued one year and now something completely different is being valued the next. But when you really understand the way that the cognitive functions of the ENFP works, you'll understand that that is the process they have to go through. NE has to move through all of these exploratory phases in order to arrive at what feels really meaningful. And SI takes note of that and eventually compiles enough data that it feels comfortable making a concrete decision. And by the way, if you don't know what I'm talking about when I use these terms, I'm talking about the ENFP's cognitive function stacking, which I go over in detail in my 6-week ENFP Soul Bootcamp course, where we impersonate the cognitive functions as different characters who act out scenes from the inside of the ENFP's brain to help you understand how you are processing information, making decisions, and otherwise operating internally.
Listen, Annie, well, you were protesting elephant cruelty in Thailand because a stranger at a bar told you to go there. I just took the liberty of going through your history and drawing up a few graphs that I thought might help us both understand how to move you a little closer to your wellness goals.
So I will leave the link to that in the description of this video, but for now, what you need to know is that the unique way you process as an ENFP, or the way that the ENFP in your life processes, might have the best of intentions at all times, but might not be aware enough yet of the internal sense of inconsistency that comes from leading with dominant extroverted intuition. There's this poem I found when I was in my early 20s by the poet Andrea Gibson, who I believe is an INFP personality, maybe an ENFP. But in the poem, there's this line they keep coming back to that goes, "Right now, I love you forever." And I thought that that was such a perfect encapsulation of unself-aware extroverted intuition. And I don't think that the poet themselves was not self-aware. I think that it was just a beautiful poem, and that was a beautiful way of expressing what that feels like when you feel as though the feeling is so strong in a moment that you believe it will never end, but then of course we do feel differently as time goes on. And maturing means something different for every personality type, right? So SJs might need to mature through opening up their worldview and learning to take on different perspectives. And the opposite might be true for NPs, where they need to learn to narrow their worldview and decide on which values and perspectives are going to matter to them. But it can feel in the moment like everything that you are feeling is going to last forever, and it takes a high degree of self-awareness and of recognizing mindfully the patterns of your own life to get to that place where you can recognize that the feelings you have in one moment might not be relevant 2 weeks, 4 months, 6 years from now. And so commitment should be chosen carefully intentionally and mindfully. But like anything, that is a process, and it's going to take time to get there. So, if you're an ENFP, be patient with yourself in this process. The best thing you can do is be mindful every step of the way. Don't beat yourself up for who you are, the way you experience life, and what you need in order to feel energized and excited about a long-term relationship. But also find a way to be honest with other people once you become aware of your own patterning, and communicate what you need in a way that manages other people's expectations and helps them understand what they are committing to and what kind of lifestyle they are committing to if they commit to you. Now, once again, this is not to say that every ENFP has a secure attachment style. You can have any personality type and any attachment style, and we will talk much more about that in the weeks to follow. But for now, these are some of the non-attachment related reasons why the ENFP in your life might have a bit of a fear of commitment, as well as what would need to happen in order for that fear of commitment to dissipate a little bit. All right, I think that's all that I have to say for today. Once again, if you are interested in taking a deep dive on the way that you experience life and relationships as an ENFP, make sure you're checking out my website, www.heidipreeb.com. I will put the link in the description of this video, and in the meantime, I love you guys, I hope you're taking care of yourselves, and I will see you back here again really soon.